Hi, it's Paul from howtoplaybassdotcom here. Got a video lesson for you on working through an Elvis Costello tune called 5 Gears in Reverse, which is on his Get Happy album. Bassline, of course, by the very great, very underrated Bruce Thomas. Nice little bassline. It's got 3 distinct sections, all of which you can learn a lot from and use as bases of lines in other songs if you choose to, or you can just learn them to play along with the song. It's one of those tunes that's really good fun to play along to. A great little bass line. I really like it. Before we get into the lesson, don't forget, if you're not a subscriber, click on the link underneath the video, head over to my website, subscribe to my free monthly e-zine. There's some video lessons you get as a thank you for subscribing. Definitely worth checking out, so go do that. Let's move on to the lesson and let's go and look at the intro. The 4-bar intro, very straightforward. It's just the open E string. Play it with the metronome. Just quickly talk through it. 3, 4. Okay, so it's very straightforward. It's just open E strings. The one thing to note is just you've got that anticipation where you're playing the last 8th note of the bar and then holding it to the first 8th note of the next bar. So 2, 3, 4. Okay, and that happens a couple of times. So if you ever listen to the original, you'll hear that, but it's very straightforward. The main parts of the song break down nicely into 3 different sections. The first section's got a nice kind of melodic sub-hook to the tune. It's an 8-bar section, 2 4-bar patterns repeated. Play through and then we'll talk through. 2, 3, 4. So let's look at that 4-bar pattern in a bit more detail. The first 2 bars, that's the first bar, and it's E, 7th fret of the A string, D, 5th fret of the A string, B, 7th fret of the E string, back to D, back to E, G natural, 5th fret of the D string, back to E. So it's E, D, B, D, E, G, E, and then it holds on that E, and then you've got the pattern that leads to the next chord, which is a G sharp chord, and it's, so you've got B, 7th fret of the E string, D, 5th fret of the A string, E, 7th fret of the A string, then you've got G sharp, the next chord, root note is G sharp, which is the 6th fret of the D string, and then the pattern for the G sharp chord is, very similar pattern. It's G sharp, that G sharp that's held, then you've got F sharp at the 4th fret of the D string, D sharp, 6th fret of the A string, back to F sharp at the 4th fret of the D string, back to G sharp, 6th fret of the D string, then up to B sharp or C natural. If you're thinking technically correctly, it's a B sharp, 5th fret of the G string, then back to G sharp, 6th fret of the D string again, and then you've got that pattern that closes, or that 3-note pattern that closes out those 2 bars, which is D sharp, F sharp, G sharp. We've already done those note locations. So the whole 4-bar pattern played really slowly. Names and the note locations. That pattern repeats, and then we go to the next section of the tune that we're going to differentiate and look at. Next section of the tune got a slightly different rhythm to that first melodic sub-hook section. Play it with the metronome, then we'll talk through the notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that that's the kind of the rhythm. And what you've got is basically a pattern that shifts around depending on the chord. So it starts off in A. Okay, so what you've got is A, 5th fret of the E string, G, natural, 5th fret of the D string, F sharp, 4th fret of the D string, E, 7th fret of the A string, back to the root note. And that's the rhythm. And then the second time through, you're shifting that pattern up to E. So the notes are E, 7th fret of the A string, D, 7th fret of the G string, C sharp, 6th fret of the G string, B, 9th fret of the D string, back to E. And repeat that pattern. But on the repeat, instead of going back to E, you go back to A, which is the next sequence in the pattern, and play what we've already done. And then the only difference when you play A the second time round is instead of ending up with, last time we ended up with E as the anticipation or the note prior to playing it on E, we're going to, the last time through in this sequence, it's G sharp, so we play that at the end of that bar, and then we've got the pattern in G sharp, which is, and that's G sharp, 4th fret of the E string, F sharp, 4th fret of the D string, E sharp or F natural, depending on how you're looking at it, 3rd fret of the D string, D sharp, 6th fret of the D string, and back to G sharp, 4th fret of the E string. And then that pattern closes out, and then we go into the little section which has got predominantly an 8th note rhythm, and then you've got kind of the stabs, and then the form starts back over. So let's go and look at that 8th note section. The last section of the main body of the tune is the section where it's got kind of an 8th note driving rhythm. I'll play it with a metronome, then we'll talk through the notes. Also at the end of this section is kind of the tag. There's some stabs which all the instruments play, which then lead back to verse 2. So let's play the section with the metronome, then we'll talk through the notes. 2, 3, 4. Held for 2 bars, and then you go back into verse 2. So let's look at the notes. First bar starts off on A, 7th fret of the D string, 2 8th notes there, then 2 8th notes, 5th fret of the D string, G natural, 2 8th notes, F sharp, 4th fret of the G string, 2 8th notes, E, 7th fret of the A string. So that first bar is, and the second bar is quite similar but an octave lower. It's 2 8th notes on A, 5th fret of the E string, 2 on G natural, 3rd fret of the E string, 2 on F sharp, which is the 2nd fret of the E string, and then 1, a quarter note on the open E, which allows you to switch up to get your hand in position for the 3rd bar, which starts here on this E, which is the 9th fret of the G string. So you've got 2 8th notes there, then you go down to D, and this time instead of playing 2 8th notes, you play a dotted 8th note and a 16th note on the D. D's at the 7th fret of the G string. So this bar, so you can hear the rhythm. So rather than just 8th notes, there's a little subtle rhythmic kick there. So that's E, D, C sharp, 6th fret of the G string, 2 8th notes there. Then you've got B, the 7th fret, the 9th fret of the D string, and then down to the low B at the 7th fret of the E string, and then you're onto the 4th bar, which is 2 E's, 7th fret of the A string, 2 D's, 5th fret of the A string, 2 C sharps, 4th fret of the A string, 2 B's, 7th fret of the E string again. And that's the first 4 bars. So I'll play it through really slowly. the second 4 bars starts off again on A. There. 2 A's on the 7th fret of the D string. Then 2 G's, 5th fret of the D string. Then 2 F sharps, 4th fret of the D string. Then E at the 7th fret of the A string. And then the low E, the open E string. And then the second bar, again, identical to the second bar in the pattern we just looked at. A, G, F sharp, open E, which is 5, 3, 2, open, all on the E string. And then the 7th and 8th bars are slightly different. We've got this little pattern that Bruce Thomas uses, which is used on other tunes as well. Radio, Radio, you'll hear this pattern. It consists of the root note and the lower 5th. So it's G sharp, 6th fret of the D string, D sharp, 6th fret of the A string. Plays that 4 times. Then that pattern shifts up to A and E, which are the 7th frets respectively of the D and A strings. And then we're into this run. And those notes, the timing, best way to get the timing is to play along with the original recording. G, 3rd fret of the E string, G sharp, 4th fret of the E string, A, 5th fret of the E string, C, 3rd fret of the A string, D, 5th fret of the A string, then there's a 1 beat rest, back to D, D sharp, 6th fret of the A string, and then you finish up on E. You can either play E there, 7th fret of the D string, 7th fret of the A string, excuse me, or you can play the open E string. I prefer to play the open E string, it's a bit ballsier, and you get a bit more punch there. Then the tune goes back and repeats those sections starting from the verse. And when you get to the second 2 sections, the one with the rhythm, it's or the 8th note section. The second time through on the recording, there are some variations that Bruce throws in, some cool things. You can either have a listen to those, try and work out some of those, or play what I've already taught you. That will get you through the tune. And then after the second time through, we go through the riff and finish on the open E string. There's an outro, which is a vamp in E. I'm going to show you a little pattern you can use for that, and then again you can throw in some rhythmic variations, some note variations if you want to as well. So let's go and look at that outro pattern. The outro pattern, as I just said, is basically a vamp in E. I'm going to show you a little pattern that you can use that will get you through a very cool little chromatic run and then anticipation to the downbeat that Bruce Thomas uses. I'll teach you that and then we're pretty much done on the tune. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and you can pretty much play that through the outro, throw in some little rhythmic variations, some little rhythmic 16th note skips will help. Basically, what we're doing is first bar, it's like a 2-bar pattern. First bar is just open E's in 8th notes, and we're holding the last E into the downbeat of the next bar. So the first bar is just, and then you go into the second bar. Now the second bar starts with that held open E, and then we play open E's for the first 2 beats, and then we've got this chromatic run, G, F sharp, F natural, E, which is then held again. Sorry, I'm playing that too hard, it's why they're rattling. But it's G, 3rd fret, F sharp 2nd fret, F 1st fret, open E. So again, that 2-bar pattern really slowly.